All right, in the last video, we have implemented some very basic movement inputs, so you can run in both directions and you can also jump with your character. That's very nice, so let's expand it further. I would like to upgrade our blueprint so that the character is always facing the direction in which the player is running. Let's get into it. All right, I want you to navigate back into our knight blueprint, so BP_knight. To implement this behavior, we're going to expand the IA run that we have already implemented previously. And what we want is we will essentially flip the sprite based on which direction we're running to. For that, we can use the set relative scale 3D node, and we're going to go with this. We're going to use the sprite as a reference. And in order to know what's going to be the new scale, we will actually check the velocity. So I'm going to say get velocity of the character, which is gonna return a vector, because in Unreal, by default everything is moving in 3 dimensions. But since we only want the x-axis, I'm gonna break this vector, and we're only gonna grab this x value. And we're going to check if it is smaller or larger than 0. If it's smaller than 0, then we know that we're moving in the negative direction. So the user is pressing the A key and it wants to be moving to the left. Whereas if it's larger, then we're moving in the positive direction, or to the right along the D key. Out of the results, we're going to drag and we're going to search for select. We're going to do select vector, because here we're going to use this value to provide the new scale for the setting the relative scale, and that is expecting a vector. So here we're also going to provide a vector. However, the y and z are always going to be the same, so we can just fill in ones in the y and z fields. And since we're checking if x is smaller than 0, if that's true, the character is moving to the left or to the negative direction. If that's true, the A scenario is going to be selected. So we're going to fill in -1, because we also want the sprite to be facing to that negative direction. And if that's false, then the B scenario is going to be selected, which is moving to the positive direction. So I'm going to fill in 1. And the return value, which is going to connect it to new scale 3D. So this is the full blueprint that would theoretically work. However, there is one unintended behavior, that is, once the player stops pressing a button, this would always flip back to the default value, which creates this unnecessary artifact. So what I want to do is that we're going to add a branch over here. I'm going to disconnect this. I'm going to type in branch, and we will only run this in case that the character is actually moving somewhere. So in case that this x vector is either larger or smaller than 0. We don't really care, because if it's smaller, then we know it's moving in the negative direction. If it's larger than 0, it's moving in the positive direction, but it's moving either way. And so we're just gonna type in exclamation point, which is gonna give us the not equal node. And if it's not equal 0, that means, again, as I just said, it's either moving to the negative or to the positive direction. And we're going to connect this as the condition for this branch. So again, if the character is moving, it doesn't matter which direction, then we will run this set relative scale. And based on which direction it is running, that's what we're checking down here. Based on that, we're providing in which direction the sprite is supposed to be facing. So this is the entire blueprint. If I save and compile and we go back to our playground, we press play. And now I press D, then obviously it's still facing towards the right, because that's the default direction. But if I press A, it's gonna face the other direction, which is exactly desired. However, you can probably notice one thing, which is that when there is the flip, there is a little bit of like a smudge or weird artifact, and that's actually a motion blur, which is enabled in Unreal projects by default because most Unreal projects are in 3D where motion blur is actually valuable. However, it's not usually very nice for 2D projects. So for that, we can go to Edit, Project Settings, search for Motion Blur, and we can disable motion blur. You can just close this, and again, if you press play, now the motion blur is gone and the flip is instant. Congratulations on completing another milestone. In the next video, we're gonna have a look at how to actually implement the correct animation so that, you know, whenever the character is running, the running animation is actually playing, and only when the player stops, then the idle animation is gonna be playing. I'll see you there.